Hey everybody, this is Matt in my surf garage. Wanted to make a series of videos for anyone who is interested in learning how to fix their own dings and do a good job of it. I'm not talking about using Solarez out of the tube, but using the proper materials to do a really good professional job and learning how to be a self-sufficient surfer. My first repair I'd like to show you is a big gouge into this epoxy shortboard here. Went through what looked like the carbon fiber here, deep into the board. This is an epoxy board, and you can tell because it has a certain chatter to it when I put my fingernails across it like this. It's like a high chatter, high pitch, versus this here, which is a poly board. You hear that difference? This epoxy has a much higher pitch to it, and also tends to feel a little rougher than poly boards. And they're lighter too. You really want to know what kind of board you're fixing so you can use the right materials. What you don't want to use on an epoxy board is this stuff, polyester surfboard sanding resin. This stuff will melt straight through an epoxy board. So we'll just put that to the side so we don't use it. We're using clear surfboard epoxy from Composite Resources. It doesn't have to be this stuff, just any kind of two-part epoxy from, a surf shop will do. I get my stuff at Mitch's Surf Shop here in San Diego. Locations in Solana Beach and La Jolla. I'm going to use this Q-Sil filler to thicken up the epoxy into a paste, a filler paste for that gouge. And then I'm going to sand it flush, and I'm going to finish it off by laminating some 4-ounce fiberglass on top of it to blend it all into the board. And I mix my epoxy using syringes so I can get an accurate measurement. The thing is with epoxy is that it's a strict 2-to-1 ratio. People make the mistake that you can speed it up by adding more hardener to it. No, it'll never dry if you keep adding hardener to it. It's strict 2-to-1 ratio, 2 parts epoxy to 1 part hardener. Anything more or less, it'll never ever dry. And you have to be very patient waiting for it to dry too. It takes a long time for this epoxy to dry, for it to be sandable. So a quick overview of what I'm going to do is I'll mix this epoxy together in this syringe. I'll shoot it in the cup. I'll probably use about 10 milliliters of this and 5 milliliters of the hardener. I'll mix it together, and then I'll put in this Q-Sil filler, makes a paste. No strict ratio for this powder, it's just whatever consistency you want. I'll make it like a thicker consistency if I'm trying to get it to stick to a rail. And for something like this, I think I'll water it down a little bit more, make it thinner, because it's got to get into all these cracks. But before I pour it in there, I'm going to rough this up really well with 80 grit. Can either do it by hand or with a sander. Let me open it up a little bit, cut some of this dead glass off. And then we'll sand it flush. Probably gonna have to wait like 12 hours at least before it's sandable. Yeah, you gotta be real patient. And I'm gonna do this inside my covered garage too. And this stuff doesn't produce really any fumes too. You don't need a respirator or any of that. But you don't want this board to get hot. And you don't want to put it out in the sun once this filler's in it, because it's going to release air out the ding and put like a bunch of pinholes and bubbles into your fill, which you don't want. I'm just doing this in a cool covered garage. And once I've sanded it off, I'm going to laminate this 4-ounce glass on top of it using a squeegee. Probably wait another 12 hours for that to dry, and then I'm going to feather it into the board using the sander. Yeah, it's a bit of a process. It takes some patience for sure, but it's well worth the effort. And we'll get started in part 2 of the video. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks, everybody.